And welcome back, everyone, to another edition of the Sports Frenzy podcast. Joining alongside myself, Phil Pinarski, is Dean Holzwarth, and Andy McDonald is back from vacation. So happy to have him back. Also want to send a thank you again to AJ Evans for filling in for Andy last week. Andy, glad to have you back. How was your vacation?
It was good.
Yeah.
Went out to Grand Teton National Park out west. My girlfriend's from Idaho Falls, really small town, so I went there. And then Missoula in Montana, which is where the Grizz play. So that's where she went to school. I got to go check that out. So a lot of good stuff. As you guys know from some of the pictures, I got pretty close to a bear itself. So
a little bit more than close, I would say.
Yeah, it was it wasn't intentional. Like, we weren't just like trying to search for that.
Yeah.
It just kind of was there. I mean, I knew it was possible. We had bear spray, all that stuff, but yeah, next thing you know, it was right next to us, and my girlfriend said she's lived out there her whole life. She's never seen one that close. So I feel extremely lucky to have seen it that close, but at the same time, it was pretty scary in the moment.
Yeah, right now.
Phil, you missed his joke, too, on our little text thread. He said, hey, I just saw Ben Johnson today. And he had a picture of the
I had
bear.
to send that for Alec Giannakopoulos, our sports reporter. So, yeah, definitely.
It's funny.
Love that. Well, again, very glad to have you back, Andy. And speaking of bears, we're also going to be talking about some lions and tigers as well. Oh, my. We're going to get into all of that coming up in just a little bit, but we do want to begin with the Tigers. Andy, you missed last week when we talked a little bit about the slumping Tigers. They slumped a little bit going into the All-Star break. They really didn't pick it back up after the All-Star break, and that losing streak got up to 6 games. They are on a 2-game winning streak as of the time we're recording this. They did end up losing the best record in the American League, which was something that we kind of held our hat on last week, was the fact that, they may have slipped in the majors, but they still had that lead in the AL. It's gone now. The Toronto Blue Jays now have the best record in the American League, but the Tigers still have a 9-game lead in the Central. We can take that in a bunch of different ways, I guess. But Andy, since you missed last week and the struggles kind of continued, I want to start off by asking you, I mean, what did you really make of just the end before the All-Star break and then kind of picking back up and just the Tigers just not feeling like how they were at the beginning of the season?
Yeah, I drove out to out west there, so I had a couple time to watch some of those games when the losing streak was going on, and it was tough to even keep on in the car when you're that bored. So it says a lot about how it was going for them. It's a stretch that I don't think anybody expected. And the thing is, like, everybody does have these stretches. The Dodgers, they were I think it was 11 of 15 they had lost. The Houston Astros had just lost 5 in a row. It happens to teams all the time when they have these losing streaks. But the Tigers' losing streak was like historically bad. They were getting outscored more than like anybody since the 30s during this losing streak, and like amounts of strikeouts they were having was like a crazy number during the 12 or 13 that they lost. So I don't have the exact stats in front of me, but I remember seeing that it was like some of the lowest. So yeah, it was definitely not good, and it's very, very, very alarming. I mean, I always talked about the bullpen and how that was kind of the concern for me for most of the season. I don't think that that's the only concern anymore. I think when you look at the starting pitching now, obviously Chris Paddock, who they just signed, is from the Twins, is kind of the guy they're going to try to have eat some innings for Reese Olson, who's done for at least the regular season, maybe a little bit longer. And then Alex Cobb is actually is tonight when we're recording this. He's starting for the Whitecaps tonight. So that's a big deal. Maybe they get him back, but their rotation all of a sudden looks a little thinner. So you'd think maybe they want to make some kind of deal to get his starting pitcher even. And you can make an argument for a bat with how bad it's been. I mean, Riley Green is striking out more than anybody in the league. He has 144 strikeouts to just 101 hits. So all of a sudden that's become an alarming thing over the last month after he was looking like he was a for sure star. Just their whole lineup just shut off completely. And even if that was just a small stretch of the season, you have to imagine when it comes to the postseason that's going to be a problem, because you're going to play against some of the best teams in the league, obviously, that probably are built to not have that bad of slumps where they get outscored by that much, they get outpitched by that much. Obviously, I think the bullpen is still the biggest thing that they have to improve on, and I think that they will address that before the trade deadline. But yeah, very concerning, and it's tough to imagine that they could really compete. They're going to make the playoffs. I mean, obviously, the Emmanuel Clase having the whole betting thing going on right now. Last night they blew it to the Rockies in the first game that he wasn't there. They gave 4 in the 9th. So I think the division's pretty safe, but that's not what they're going for, right?
Right.
That wasn't the goal this year. So I think they need to make quite a few moves here still before the deadline if they want to compete.
Indeed. I mean, we kind of touched on it last week a little bit. Just, the Tigers were slumping, but we were both kind of holding out hope that this was just jitters or extended. They're still in Atlanta from the All-Star game. Eventually they would pick it back up, but that losing streak kept going. I mean, how surprised were you to kind of just see just those downward spiral that the Tigers were going on? Again, they have picked it back up in these past 2 games, but again, another 6-game losing streak.
It was tough. It was like hot and cold kind of thing, right? And And then the thing was, I think the Tigers were pressing a little bit too much, right? Like, I think that's where kind of some of the strikeouts came from. They got down early in games, and a lot of those games weren't even very competitive. And then that backside, the teams would score 6, 7 runs in the last 2 or 3 innings against the bullpen. So, it was tough to watch. Every day I'm looking on my phone to see if they're going to win, and they just kind of kept snowballing, right? And baseball is a game of kind of ups and downs and little lulls, and I think Scooble said it correctly. Like, every team's going to kind of go through this, and we just got to battle through and just keep working hard and keep going to the stadium every day, and things are going to get better. I think Sunday, the last couple innings, when they kind of exploded for those runs to win that final game against Toronto, hopefully that kind of builds some momentum. You saw it last night. Obviously, Melton had a great outing last night, but hopefully some confidence kind of can be manufactured from this, and they can start getting on a little roll and win 3, 4, 5 games in a row, start winning some series, because we're not used to the Tigers losing 3 series in a row, especially with how bad they were. And to Andy's point, it was that 13-game span, they had over 125 strikeouts. Yeah. So that was kind of and they're outscored. The margin of victory or the defeat was obviously crazy, and they were getting out hit. So yeah, everything was going wrong in that 13-game span, and hopefully we don't see that again the rest of the year.
Yes, now fingers crossed there. I do want to give a quick shout out though to Troy Melton, who started in last night's game against the Diamondbacks, and it was his second career start. He didn't give up a run. He struck out 7. That was a positive sign. And kind of both of your points of just about how the pitching has been really the main cause of concern, I feel like, this season for the Tigers outside of Scooble. So now kind of seeing this guy in Troy Melton kind of pick it up a little bit, have a good outing like that. I mean, how huge would that be if he can maybe make that a little bit more consistent?
Well, I think Troy Melton is actually a very, very interesting piece for them right now, because they actually thought about using him out of the bullpen at other points this year, because as you saw last night, he got up to, I think it was almost 99 miles an hour at one point. So he was kind of that, what did I talk about the whole time? They needed to find that hard throwing arm at the back of the bullpen. So there was an idea for that, but obviously they've had all these injuries to their rotation that they came out and said he's a part of the starting rotation. Now, what makes all this interesting is, they're playing against the team with Eugenio Suarez, who is the name that's floating around everywhere, because he's a third baseman. He's a right-handed bat. He has 36 home runs. That's kind of the guy that everybody's looking at. Well, he debuted last night in front of the team that, maybe would be. Evan Petzold covers the Detroit Tigers for the Free Press. He's one of my good friends from college. If you don't follow him, you should. He is pretty plugged into everything there, and he came out with a bunch of trade scenarios before the game, and he put one in there where Troy Melton was involved in one of the trades to get Suarez from the Diamondbacks and another pitcher. I guess I have to ask both of you guys. So you saw 7 innings last night of shutout baseball, but then obviously the game against the Pirates wasn't very good. But if they liked enough what they saw last night, if you were going to get Suarez back for him straight up towards the deadline, would you do it right now?
Yes.
Yes.
I feel like obviously yes.
I think so. I think so too. But I think at this point, they could.
Yes.
He's a 37-year-old guy. I think that's what people don't really realize. Is he's getting kind of towards the end of his contract. He's basically going to be a 2-month rental, and that's why nobody's going to give up a lot for him. I think that was the perfect debut last night. If you were able to trade him for somebody that was a bat or a bona fide starting pitcher or something like that. It's awesome that he's pitching good, and if he ends up staying here, great. But the other thing that I looked into is Jackson Jobe last year is kind of in a similar situation where he's a rookie and he came up. He threw 91 innings. That's all the Tigers would allow him to throw until the postseason where he came in the bullpen. Troy Melton's already thrown 87 innings this year.
Right.
So I'm very interested to see if they value him as a top 10 prospect like he is, kind of the same way, if they would even let him pitch, as a starting pitcher into September. And they need starting pitchers right now. And obviously Chris Paddock is the guy they signed. Hasn't been great this year. His ERA is still kind of towards 5. I think that was just more of an inning eater move. So I don't know if you have any major opinions on it, but I do think Troy Melton's a very interesting piece.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think with Paddock, maybe a change in scenery and a change in environment can maybe help him. You see a lot of times pitchers will just kind of struggle with the team, and then they get traded. Now there's, new life with them, and maybe he can do something. Because the Tigers are going to need some pieces, like you said, Andy, to kind of win down the stretch here and continue to have some, postseason success. So, all these little things that they're doing are hopefully going to pay off in the end.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anybody better than Chris Fetter at getting a pitcher, getting the most out of a pitcher. He's been pretty good at that. I mean, perfect example last night with Troy Melton. I mean, that's a 7-inning start against the lineup that's been pretty good offensively, even with him being banged up. So, I do like how they try to have these projects sometimes, and it works out for them, and it doesn't cost them a lot. The Paddock move to me was kind of just whatever, like if it works out, that's amazing. But I would still like to see him get a starter that is, good, that is already good at this level, that is for sure going to be somebody that can pitch in this rotation. Because Casey Mize has given up 5 his last 2 times out, I think. Jack Flaherty obviously had a huge start the other day, but he's been up and down all season. You can't pitch Tarek Skubal 4 games in a row in the playoffs. So
unfortunately,
yeah, exactly right.
Just clone him. Why not?
Yeah. Why don't we just do that? Yeah,
exactly.
Clone Tarek Skubal.
I mean,
that might be
use him as much as you
easier for
could.
them, honestly.
I mean, who knows? Maybe they're not going to pay him $400 million, just throw him 4 games in a row. But yeah, I don't know. It's I just think they need to get another starting pitcher as well. But the bat is still the bottom priority for me. But it is really interesting what they could probably do with Troy Melton, especially after that debut he kind of had last night with that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, speaking of just potential moves for the Tigers, the trade deadline is this week. Keeping a close eye on what the Tigers are going to be doing. We'll probably, hopefully, have a few more trades to talk about and just kind of focus on next week. But kind of as it stands now, we touched on Chris Paddock and that trade. We touched on the possibility of bringing in Suarez, maybe shipping on some of these other guys. But let's just focus on what this team is right now. Given what they are right now, is this a World Series competing or even winning team, or is it kind of imperative that a move needs to be made before the next few days?
I mean, you've seen what they were able to do with this lineup, right, in the first half. And yes, obviously now no Reese Olson, no Jackson Jobe. Like, you have had some injuries to the pitching staff. However, this lineup, you've seen exactly what they can generate. They can generate some offense. They can generate some power up and down the lineup. So I think the pieces are still there. Like I said, I think it's kind of a confidence thing, a momentum thing. Once they start getting on a little roll here, I think they're going to be just fine. And that, you're going to put the 13-game, losing skid or whatever in the back rearview mirror. Yeah. So I think we can kind of forget about this, kind of move forward. I think they're past this. But no, I think this is a team that can still contend on a daily basis and continue to do what they've been doing all year.
You guys ever watch the movie Moneyball?
Yes.
They never win the World Series, right? I think that they need to add. I think that they need to add.
Moneyball reference.
For me, I think it's just they need to add a couple pieces to this team that are like actually staples in this lineup that are going to make them that good, especially in the pitching department. I mean, you can't. I don't think there's any way you can tell me that bullpen. They're not sending one guy out right now that you have confidence in to get it done, right?
Not even my boy Will Vest.
Yeah, no, he almost ended our hopes last night by beating Suarez in the hand. So I mean, that was a whole thing too. At the end of that game, it was like, oh my gosh, wouldn't that be the most Detroit thing? Like, Joel Samayo with the Guitar Hero thing and all that kind of stuff. It's always something that happens like that. But it's just, for me, it's like if they don't get more like depth in this lineup, I guess when it comes to like actually having a hitter that can hit with that much power in the middle of it and that consistently, obviously Suarez strikes out a lot, but when you get 36 home runs, that definitely pays its dividends. He has the most RBIs in baseball. So I think making a move like that is, if they really, really, really want to show that they're pushing for the World Series to compete with teams like the Dodgers at this point. American League, maybe they could win with what they have right now, but they're not going to win. The NL is way too stacked with the teams they have over there if they go on with this roster. So I think this is probably with Terry Skubal and how much money he's going to want in the future, this might be the biggest trade deadline that Scott Harris has. Right. I mean, honestly. So it's going to be a really interesting next 72 hours.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're right. They need a shot in the arm. I think that would be big, right? To kind of rejuvenate them and kind of get them looking forward to the last couple months here. So I agree with you.
Riley Green's your star right now, and he is still struggling.
Parker Meadows struggling.
Yeah,
you can go down the lineup.
And Meadows just went to the 10-day IL. So that's another guy that it's just they got a couple bad injury news yesterday. It's just you feel like they got to make some trades with all these prospects they have down there. I mean, even if you don't, I know they don't want to give up one of their top 5 guys, but you still have guys like Max Anderson, Jaden Ham. Sure, they might end up being the next Eugenio Suarez that the Tigers traded away and ends up being this good. But right now, you have to try to win with what you have, Right. So I think back to the 2012 World Series era when they traded for a David Price at the deadline. How big of a deal? Obviously, they didn't get any runs for it in the World Series, but he still pitched good and pitched good down the stretch for him. And going and getting Prince Fielder and stuff like that. Torrey Hunter was a veteran leader. I just feel like they need some of those kind of pieces in this lineup if they actually want to win a World Series. But if I'm proven wrong, I wouldn't be upset about it.
Right,
That's for sure.
absolutely. Well, again, it's something we're going to be keeping a close eye on here, and of course, we're going to be breaking it down all again next week after the trade deadline passes, see what moves the Tigers made or didn't make. But let's move on now to another Detroit team that is in the news, that being the Detroit Lions. They are getting set for the Hall of Fame game this Thursday. It will be broadcasting live right here on News 8, so you can tune into that. But some stories have been coming out of the Lions training camp. Obviously, we had the injury news last week, but this week, some really good news, and that being the fact that Aiden Hutchinson has reportedly been dominating there in training camp, just, causing havoc for offenses and everybody that's, they're just able to really see what he's got after that season-ending injury, and it looks like that he's back to normal, or at least that's what it sounds like. I mean, how good of news is that? Just hearing that he may be back to where he was before that really gruesome injury last year.
I mean, it's great news, right? And I think no one's surprised by this, right? Aiden's a guy who was probably a guy who went out and worked hard on his rehab and did everything that he could to get back onto the field and be hopefully back to where the dominant guy that he was before the injury. So it doesn't surprise me at all, obviously, that he is at this level, and hopefully it does continue through training camp. But no, it's just great news for the Lions and their defense and all you Detroit fans.
Yeah, I mean, Hutchinson was playing at a level last season through the games he was at where he was going to definitely lead the league in sacks. He had a chance to be the defensive player of the year. I think if he would have kept playing at that rate, he would have, and I really didn't see anything slowing him down until that injury. So obviously it's always scary coming back to see if those things are going to reoccur, but it seems like he's put in so much work in the offseason. I mean, you're not going to find a more highly motivated guy to be that good, and I think it's huge for them. I mean, if he's in the lineup and playing, that's absolutely big for them. Obviously, Marcus Davenport is the other guy that people are kind of talking about if he can stay healthy, because obviously Lee McNeil is not going to be back till later in the season now. So the defensive line has kind of even had a little bit of injury trouble. So, I mean, for me, I think that this defense is kind of actually, everybody's talking about the offense, the offensive line, if it's going to make this big difference, which is fair, and that's definitely important and something you should be watching for when you watch this Hall of Fame game. But I think the importance of Aiden Hutchinson being back and this defensive front being that good, this defense has a chance to be elite again. I mean, they were playing in like a top 10 level before, all the injuries happened last year. And I mean, all the injuries. They had so many, and that's obviously kind of what stuck out towards the end of the year. I think to me, the defensive line being good is almost just as important as the offensive line being good right now, because they kind of set the table for everybody else. But obviously there was that little bit of news about Terry and Arnold leaving with the hamstring injury today. So hopefully that's not something that lingers too long.
No, right.
Because he's been playing really well so far in camp.
I've been hearing that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, every time I get an injury report from the Lions, my heart sinks a little bit just because you never want to have what happened last year to happen to really any team, but specifically the teams that you are kind of rooting for. So again, that's something that we're gonna hopefully avoid throughout at least through training camp if we can, even throughout the rest of the season. And kind of on the other side of the ball, talking about the offense now, a lot of discussions was being had about how the offense would look under new offensive coordinator John Morton. We also learned that John Gruden, the former NFL coach, has reportedly become a mentor and has been at training camp with the Lions and has been kind of a mentor for Morton. How do you guys feel about that? Just knowing that they had to bring in somebody like John Gruden, do you see it as more so, a good thing? We've got this coach in with all this experience coming in to help out, or do you see it as maybe John Morton maybe isn't as ready to go and be an OC if they need this extra help? I
don't know John Gruden personally.
Yeah.
So I don't know how he is for sure, but I guess I could, take my guess that he might be a little bit pushy of a guy that wants. I feel like he's wanted to get back into coaching since all that stuff went down. So I feel like maybe he was kind of asking. I know he always was complimenting the Lions and how their offense looked and everything else. I could see him wanting to be in the room. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
I think it's more just that he probably wanted to, I don't know how well he knows John Morton, but maybe he was like, can I come and help and, give my advice? I feel like it was maybe more that kind of situation.
Gotcha.
I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, I think so too. I think, John Gruden's a guy who's won a Super Bowl, right? Lots of success before everything kind of unraveled for him. Having a kind of a really good football mind in the room, like you said, Andy, is definitely just going to help. And I think Dan Campbell's obviously okay with that, and he's for that. And so I don't think there's anything but positives with kind of Gruden being around. I thought it was interesting though to learn today that John Morton was not going to be on the sidelines for games. He's going to be up in the booth calling plays. So I thought that was a little interesting. But it's going to be all right.
It is. I mean, do you guys think that makes a big difference? I really don't know. I mean,
Personally, I think you would want to have the offensive coordinator up in the booth to see everything. Defensive coordinator, I feel like, I don't know, just from my own experience playing football, they are kind of like the motivators. They like getting in your face, talking to you one-on-one. So, and the offensive coordinator is a little bit more of a tactician, I guess. So that's sort of the difference I see there. But I don't.
Yeah, obviously the Lions' offense was as good as it was under Ben Johnson. He was always on the field. But I feel like you have to have somebody up top still. Yeah. I mean, there's got to be somebody in his ear either way. So I guess if the coordinator prefers that, then that's the way to go about it. But I think if that's the eyes in the offense, I'd say I probably like him up there more than not.
Yeah, definitely. And also what came out, I believe it was either earlier this week or late last week, ESPN surveyed a bunch of NFL execs, scouts, coaches to come up with the top 10 quarterbacks going into the 2025 season. And our man, Jared Goff, came in at number 8. And I just wanted to ask you guys if you thought that was a fair rating. Would you have rated Goff a little bit higher, maybe even outside of the top 10?
I think it's fair.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of good quarterbacks in the league, and Goff's probably, obviously down toward the top 10 there. Goff is super consistent. Obviously he's not fleet of foot. He doesn't obviously roll out a lot. He doesn't run. So, but in this offense, Goff does a really good job. So, accurate thrower. Sometimes the ball wobbles at times, but for the most part, he can throw it deep when it opportunity arises. So, I think 8. If I'm thinking about all the quarterbacks in that top 7, Goff's is a pretty good spot.
You're talking about a guy that got traded to Detroit and was expected to basically have his career die here. So to be getting mentioned in even the top 10 is pretty good in itself. I mean, you could do the whole thing where you list like every quarterback, but we're not going to bore you with that.
Yeah.
It's I think 8 is a pretty fair spot for how successful the offense has been since he's been there, because yes, the offensive line has been a huge part of it. And yes, Ben Johnson was a huge part of it. The dynamic duo they have in the backfield of Montgomery and Gibbs, huge part of it. But like, that's for any offense. You still, I mean, unless you're like Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes, like those guys that can like literally change plays on their own, they're in the top 5 for a reason, I think. So I think number 8 is a pretty good spot for him, because even though, like you kind of said, Dean, his ball is a little wobbly at times, he's very, very accurate, even with the not as pretty of a throw. So I think I like where he's ranked right there at 8. I'd have to see the quarterback list in front of me maybe if I really wanted to be picky, but I think 8's a pretty good spot.
Yeah, gives him something to strive for this season, I think, moving up the rankings a little bit. All right, so obviously big game happening, kicks off the NFL preseason, that being the Hall of Fame game this Thursday. A lot of guys we've already learned, will not be suiting up. They will not be taking part in the first preseason game. That's to be expected, but is there anybody in particular you guys are really excited to see, or something in particular you want to see from this Lions team going into that first game?
I mean, I talked about it last week. I'm looking forward to seeing Isaac Tesla. Right now he's probably the 5th receiver, and so if he can really kind of show out in the preseason here and really kind of catapult his way and kind of move up and maybe get some significant playing time once the season begins, it'd just be really interesting to see how he adjusts to the speed of the NFL. Obviously coming from Arkansas, where they didn't really I feel like knew how to use him. Obviously, from people I've talked to, he's had a great training camp so far. I think he still needs to improve his route running a little bit, but he's got sure hands. And so I'm really interested to see what Isaac can do in this preseason to kind of, jump up in the depth chart.
Right.
For me, it's Hendon Hooker. I think if the Lions are kind of just been banking on him and talking about he's been a little more on time and everything else, I've been reading some stuff about that with him, and it basically is so important to have in the NFL that number 2 quarterback that can come in if somebody does get injured. The Lions have been very fortunate that Goff, he did have that little ankle roll last year where he played through it for a few weeks, and they were able to get by with that. But sometimes you're not going to have that, and then you have to have somebody come in. And last year, obviously, they had to sign Bridgewater for that playoff game, and he did have to come in for a few plays. So obviously the confidence, I know they say the confidence was there, but was the confidence really there if they didn't have him as the backup in the playoffs last year? Obviously that does take a lot of experience to play at that time, but still, if he was really had that much raw talent, like a Michael Penix, say, or something like that, they probably would have just had him be the backup. And I think that this is so big for him. All these preseason games he gets to play in, he's been off time from what I've heard sometimes at practice, and he's been on time. So I think that to be able to show it in a game when you actually have defenders coming at you and everything else, and a lot of guys that are backups, especially in this first game, they're going to be trying to play for spots and giving it everything they have. I think it's very, very important for him to have a good showing, especially in this first game.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're very excited again. I feel so excited about the start of football season again.
let's go.
I know people feel some type of way about the preseason, but football is football. I'm just excited for it to be back, and it all does get going Thursday night right here on News 8. Very excited about that. Let's shift gears now again. It's something a little bit different, not really a whole lot to do with sports here in West Michigan, but a sports movie, rather. This past weekend, Happy Gilmore 2 launched over on Netflix, and I think all three of us have seen it now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Before I give my opinion, wanted to hear from you guys. How did you like it? I know there's always that talk about sequels coming so many years later. You know, it's a 90s classic, or is it going to hold up, kind of? I mean, what did you guys really think of the movie in general?
I mean, it met my expectations, right?
Okay.
Like I kind of had high expectations for this movie. I was looking forward to it. Obviously, with a lot of cameos from the PGA golfers and Travis Kelce and everybody else. And obviously, I loved the first one 30 years ago. So to me, it was funny. You know, I kind of rewatched it the other day, so I watched it twice now, and it was just there's just some really, really funny parts. And obviously, if you haven't watched it, I'm not going to really divulge some little, not give away anything.
Right.
But there was just some funny lines, and I thought they did a really good job of bringing back almost everybody from the first one. And I think it was really, really done really well. And I recommend it. I give it what's the Rotten Apples? 5 stars.
Rotten Apples.
No, Rotten Tomatoes. Sorry.
That's it, yeah.
Rotten Apples is 1 through 100. IMDb is 1 through 10.
Okay.
For me, it was a little slow to start, but obviously you have to kind of recap and go back and have all those memories and everything for him and kind of explain the story anyway. And I don't really think Happy Gilmore was ever made to be a good movie, air quotes, since you can't see it now.
Right.
But it's hilarious. And I do think once you get past, I don't want to give away any spoilers, but once you get past the dinner scene, starting with that, that's when I started to laugh. But I also think if you really think this movie's funny, I think you have to like golf for this one. Like actually like golf, like the sport of golf, because of it's so funny to see those golfers act like they do in some of those scenes. Like you would, I mean, you would never see them act like that. Obviously on the golf course, like in the PGA, and even when they do get interviewed and stuff, they don't really have those kind of personalities. So the two that I thought were the most funny, I won't say what they did, but I think what Xander Schauffele was doing during the dinner scene was pretty funny.
Oh yeah,
and
that's
I think
what she said.
Yeah. Will Zalatoris, I think that was
Will was great.
That was hilarious. That whole scene with what goes on with that. So those two were easily my favorite parts of the movie.
Yeah.
And lastly, before you go, Phil, John Daly, I thought was tremendous.
great.
I was going to ask, did you have
John
a favorite
Daly.
cameo?
John Daly was great.
Yeah, John Daly was great. I also really like. I thought it was funny that Eminem was in there.
Yeah, it was crazy.
I almost didn't recognize him until they took a close up of him.
Same.
When he was drowning, he threw a Detroit what? that was
that
great.
was classic.
I was dying at that.
Yeah, Scott Sheffield had some great lines.
Right, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
my
for
gosh.
sure.
No, and I thought it was interesting. I'll say this: I don't think it was as funny as the first one, maybe, but there were definitely moments where I really laughed out loud.
Oh yeah.
And I also thought it took more of a serious turn for a lot of it. Obviously we're not going to spoil anything, but there is this overarching plot plot point in this movie that kind of just hangs over throughout the rest of it. And I mean, there were some really serious moments in there, but I think they did a good job of balancing out, obviously, with all the cameos. Boban Marjanovic being in that was really funny.
Boban was great.
Lavelle Crawford playing the son of Chubbs. He has been on the Daily 8 before, so it was nice seeing somebody that I actually knew in the movie too. So and kind of to Dean's point, John Daly was hysterical. I thought every line he had, I can't believe. I don't know if he's ever acted in anything else before, but you could not tell that this was maybe his first movie role ever, really.
Yeah, I think it was just kind of like you said, Phil. It was just the first one might have been. I think the first one's funnier just because it feels like they didn't have all those big names in it to try to make it funny. Yeah. There were also some scenes in this movie where I cringed a lot too. Where I was like, I don't know about that.
I feel like that's.
It was just a lot of I would
now.
laugh really hard, and then it was kind of I didn't really need that scene.
Yeah, right.
So I don't know. I'm definitely more of a fan of the first one too, but. Yeah. I don't know. That's more my humor. So
right. All right. Real quick, while we still have just a little bit of time left, though, favorite Adam Sandler movie? Do you guys have a favorite one? Is it the original Happy Gilmore? Is it maybe this one sneaking up?
That is a tough question. Yeah. I remember as a kid, my dad took me my first movie that probably only adults should be seeing when I went to go see Click, and that has always been one of my favorite ones that he made, even though it was a little bit later. And then is it Billy Madison?
Yep,
That's
Billy
what it is.
That was going to be mine.
Yep,
those
that's
are-
a good one.
That's
That
probably
is
my
pretty
favorite
funny.
older one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say Mr. Deeds is probably my favorite. I love that movie, but this is going to sound crazy, but Jack and Jill, I actually find it to be very funny, even though it's like the most panned movie of all time. There's just something about Adam Sandler. I think he just
Hilarious.
gets my funny bone every time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
all
I
right.
think the recent basketball movie that he did.
I was
Yes,
just gonna say
well,
that.
yeah,
I think
that
I
was
mentioned
great,
that
too.
before
What's
on
the
this
name of that movie?
podcast.
That was really
Hustle.
good. Hustle.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
Hustle
called.
was really
Especially
good.
for people in the business like us, like they actually do a pretty
Yes.
decent job
Yeah,
of
right.
describing like how it is. So
Yeah.
I think that was a really, really good movie too.
Yeah,
for sure.
absolutely. All right, awesome stuff. Well, gentlemen, thank you both so much for joining us once again. We'll see you again next week.
Thanks.